Hi, you're on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever ignored your gut, only to regret it later, you're not alone. She said it was just a night out. I said, make it count. You're done. It wasn't the messages. It wasn't the lipstick smudged across the wine glass. It wasn't even the fact that she started locking her phone after a decade of leaving it face up on the counter. No, it was a crumpled receipt wedged between the frozen peas and a half-used bag of shredded cheese. That's how this started. I was digging in the freezer looking for leftover lasagna. I'd skipped lunch again. Her car wasn't in the driveway, so I figured I'd have some peace and microwave silence for once. But then I saw it. A glossy, heat-printed receipt from Cavalier's Lounge, a bar an hour away, a place I'd only ever seen tagged in Instagram stories by local girls who wore heels to gas stations. I don't know what made me pull it out. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was just cold hunger and curiosity. But there it was, date, time, items. 2 cocktails, 1 whiskey neat, 1 dessert, 2 entrees, table for 2. I stood there for a full minute with the freezer wide open. Cold air clung to my knees like a warning. See, Marla, my wife, she told me she was at a movie that night. With Dina from HR. Said they were catching up. Said, you wouldn't be interested in this kind of film. It's artsy and slow. I remember mumbling, sure, and going back to assembling a broken lamp I'd been putting off for 2 weeks. That was 2 nights ago. Now I was staring at the $112.67 receipt that said otherwise. I didn't yell. I didn't call her. I didn't storm through the house like in the movies. No, I did what any self-doubting, anxious, quietly unraveling husband would do. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at that piece of paper until the sun went down. And when she walked in later that night, all breezy and soft smiling, wearing that perfume she only ever wears when she wants something, I asked her calmly, did Dina like the movie? Her hand paused midair, holding her keys. She blinked. What? You said you went to the movie. With Dina. Did she like it? There was a silence. Not long. Just long enough to prove a lie. She shrugged, walking past me. Yeah, I mean, it was just a night out. Just a night out. That's what she said. And that's when I finally stopped being scared of losing her. I said, make it count, you're done. And then I stood up, went to the garage, and pulled down the storage box labeled, If She Ever Lies. Because yes, I'd been preparing for this moment for longer than she could imagine. When I told her, make it count, you're done, I don't think she believed me. She just stood there in the hallway with her purse still on her shoulder, blinking like I had just misquoted a movie. I didn't shout. I didn't throw the receipt. I didn't even ask where she really was that night. I just walked past her, calm as a whisper, and went straight into the garage. The box was wedged between old camping gear we never used and a broken fan I never fixed. It was dusty, taped shut, and had no label. I had written, If She Ever Lies, on the inside of the lid, not out of paranoia, but because I'd learned over the years to stop trusting words and start documenting feelings. This box held evidence. Not the kind that wins court cases. The kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m. because your gut knew something long before your heart did. Inside were small things. Things I had noticed over the last 8 months. A napkin with lipstick that wasn't hers. A crumpled paper from a dry cleaner with someone else's initials. The birthday card she said she lost, signed, Yours always, C. Even though none of her friends' names started with C. I even had a printout of a social media post she thought I never saw. Her hand holding a drink in a bar I had never taken her to. Tagged in someone else's story, quickly deleted. I kept all of it not because I didn't love her, but because I did. And I needed proof that I wasn't insane. I carried the box inside and set it on the coffee table. She watched me from across the room, still standing like a guest in our own house. I didn't say a word. Just opened the box and slowly laid the contents out in a row. She looked down, her face blank at first. Then slowly, her lips parted. Not to speak, but to breathe through the panic she was trying to hide. What is this? She finally whispered, trying to sound confused. This is everything I didn't want to believe, I said. Every time I doubted myself and you told me I was too sensitive. Every moment you said I was imagining things, being insecure, overthinking. She laughed. Actually laughed. You made a box? Malcolm, this is insane. You're acting like some jealous stalker. But she wouldn't touch the receipt, or the napkin, or the birthday card. She just stared at them like they were laced with poison. I didn't make the lies, I said quietly. I just kept the proof. That's when her expression changed. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't anger. It was something I didn't expect, calculation. As if she was deciding in real time which version of herself to become next. She sat down, crossed her legs, and leaned forward. Okay, she said. So maybe I went out. Maybe I didn't tell you everything. But Malcolm, do you hear yourself? You've been collecting things. This isn't healthy. That word again. Unhealthy. She loved using it when I was finally close to the truth. Like logic was a disease and silence was the cure. I didn't respond. Instead, I reached under the couch cushion and pulled out my final piece, a printed photo from a security camera. Her, at Cavalier's Lounge, with a man I didn't recognize. His hand on her thigh. Her head tilted back in laughter. Timestamped. Dated. Same night as the receipt. She didn't laugh this time. She didn't even flinch when I dropped the photo in front of her. It was surreal, honestly. I always thought when someone gets caught red-handed, there'd be panic, stumbling, maybe even tears. But Cassidy, she just stared at it like she was waiting for a commercial break to end. Like none of it surprised her. Like she was in control. I remember sitting down slowly across from her, watching her process it, or more likely, rehearse. I knew that look, that quiet loading bar behind her eyes. It meant she was preparing her version. And I swear to you, the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed wasn't her betrayal. It was how easily she slipped into character. She leaned back, eyes still on the picture, and said, Malcolm, I need you to understand something. No apology. No explanation. Just control. What you think this is, it isn't. You're looking at it through a broken lens. And I can't fix that for you anymore. I blinked. A broken lens? Yes, she said, folding her hands like we were in marriage counseling. You're emotionally fragile. You've always needed reassurance. I've given you years of that, Malcolm. Years. But eventually, you start to suffocate the people around you. I felt my heart slow down. It wasn't beating fast anymore. It was like it had dropped into some cold, quiet place inside me. Her words weren't loud, but they were sharp. Practiced. She knew exactly what buttons to push. You're really going to stand there and tell me this man, I pointed at the photo, was just a hallucination caused by my emotional fragility? She tilted her head. I never said he wasn't real. I'm saying you don't know the whole story. I stared at her, speechless. Because she wasn't panicking. She was reframing, turning herself into the victim of my suspicion. She wasn't defending herself from the truth. She was weaponizing my quiet, loyal, anxious personality against me. You said it was a movie night with Dina, I said, trying to keep my voice from cracking. You said it was just a night out. She smiled, not cruelly, but sadly, as if I was the one breaking something. And you never once asked if I was happy, Malcolm. You built this little world around your routines, your spreadsheets, your late-night overthinking, and expected me to sit in it like a pet. That hit me. Hard. Because maybe there was some truth in it. I was quiet. I was routine-driven. But I never wanted her caged. I just wanted her honest. You think this is on me? I asked. That all of this, the lies, the sneaking around, is because I didn't ask if you were happy? She stood up, slowly, walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water like we were in the middle of a break from a play. I think, she said calmly, that we both needed different things. And I wasn't brave enough to say it until now. The word brave nearly made me laugh. Brave? Hiding receipts in the freezer, lying to my face, crawling into some stranger's lap in a dimly lit bar? That was bravery? She took a sip of water, looked at me over the rim of the glass, and then said the line I'll never forget. I never cheated, Malcolm. I escaped. That was the moment I realized she hadn't just betrayed me. She'd written herself into a new role. One where I was the controlling husband. One where her nights out weren't betrayal. They were liberation. And she wasn't done. Not even close. Because what she did next nearly cost me everything. I wish I could tell you that I walked away that night and never looked back. That I slammed the door and rediscovered some fiery, confident version of myself that had been buried beneath years of her manipulation. But that's not what happened. Because Cassidy didn't just lie and cheat. She prepared. While I was clinging to fragments of a marriage I thought I was protecting, she was already 3 moves ahead, building her defense like a chess master against an opponent too polite to make the first move. The morning after our confrontation, I woke up to a text from my older sister, Ruth. It said, "Call me. Now." My stomach sank before I even hit dial. The second she answered, she said. Why didn't you tell me you were struggling mentally again? I blinked. What are you talking about? Cassidy called me last night. Said she's really concerned. That you've been keeping journals full of paranoid thoughts. That you're convinced she's cheating and spying on her. She sounded scared. Malcolm. I didn't even know how to respond. My throat dried up. Cassidy, the woman who sat calmly as I laid out proof of her infidelity, had, within hours, recast herself as the terrified wife of a delusional man. Ruth, I'm not losing it. I have proof. Photos. Receipts. Phone records. But Ruth interrupted me. I'm not saying I don't believe you, Malcolm. But you do isolate yourself. You don't talk. You internalize everything. Maybe she just needed a break. A break. That word felt like a punch in the chest. Because when Cassidy said, it's just a night out, that's what she meant. A break. Not from work. Not from stress. From me. I hung up. I didn't argue. I couldn't. Because Cassidy hadn't only planned for confrontation. She had insulated herself with sympathy in advance. She'd planted seeds for months. Stories of how I shut down, how I get weird when I'm stressed, how I overthink little things. Now, with a few well-placed calls, she made it sound like I was unraveling, and she was just the exhausted spouse trying to hold it all together. And it worked. It worked so well that by noon, my mother called me crying, asking if I needed help. My mother, the woman who raised me to be calm, responsible, decent, now second-guessing whether I was emotionally stable enough to be left alone. But the final straw came when I checked our shared bank account. Gone. Wiped clean. Cassidy had transferred nearly everything into an account I didn't recognize. The rent, the emergency fund, even the money I had set aside for our 10-year anniversary trip, a trip she now would likely be taking with someone else. I rushed to call the bank. But since we were married and the account was joint, there was nothing they could do. She hadn't stolen it. She had just relocated it. Perfectly legal. Perfectly timed. I sat in the living room for hours after that, not moving. Just staring at the bare wall across from me, wondering if I had really lost my mind, or if she had just stolen it piece by piece over the years until there was nothing left to fight with. But then something happened that cracked her perfect story open. At 4:23 p.m., Cassidy forgot to log out of her old tablet, the one I had boxed up during spring cleaning and shoved into the closet. Notifications started pinging. A message preview popped up from someone labeled Jenna, backup plan. I hesitated for maybe half a second before opening it. And what I found inside, let's just say, she wasn't scared of me. She was scared of getting caught before she was ready to vanish for good. Cassidy's old tablet hadn't been touched in months. It still had the cracked corner from when she dropped it during a camping trip she hated. I remember she called it an outdated brick. Funny, considering it almost saved my life. When I opened the message from Jenna, backup plan, I expected gossip. Maybe Cassidy venting about me. What I didn't expect was a full-blown exit strategy, laid out in brutal detail like a villain's monologue typed in real time. Jenna wasn't just a friend. She was coaching Cassidy, every message like a tutorial on how to leave a marriage without leaving a mess behind. A mess for her, not me. The most recent message from Cassidy said, "He finally confronted me. I think it's time. Can you reach out to that guy you mentioned? The one with the sublet in Austin?" And Jenna's reply? "Already done. You'll have a place by Tuesday. Just make sure the mental health narrative is solid. You don't want him flipping it on you." That line nearly made me drop the tablet. The mental health narrative. That's what they were calling it. Not concern. Not worry. Narrative. They were pre-building a version of reality where I was the broken one, and she was the brave survivor walking away with nothing but her suitcase and a misunderstood heart. But it got worse. The next thread was older. 2 months old. Cassidy had sent Jenna voice recordings. I hesitated. I didn't want to hear them, but I had to. When I played the first one, I heard my own voice, muffled, distant, asking her if she was coming home for dinner. It was from a day I remember vividly, when she claimed to be at her mother's house helping with renovations. Her voice in the recording was fake sweet. She told me she'd be home by 7. As soon as she ended the call, I heard her laugh in the background and say, "He still buys it. Every time. It's actually kind of sad now." Another voice, definitely male, replied, "Then why haven't you left him?" Her answer? "Because I need the timing to be right. He's too quiet. Too smart. If I don't control the exit, he'll control the story." I must have sat there for 20 minutes, hands shaking, tablet on my lap, her words still echoing like static in my brain. She didn't just want to leave me. She wanted to bury me beneath her version of the truth. She had already turned my family. She had already emptied the accounts. And now she had proof, carefully curated audio, to use if I ever dared push back. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. I just kept reading, scrolling, listening, until I had pieced together a horrifying realization. Cassidy hadn't been careless. She'd been meticulous. This was never about one affair. It was about an erasure. Of me. Of my credibility. Of my story. And yet, she didn't know I had the tablet. The next morning, I called in sick to work. First time in over 4 years. Then I printed every message. Every file. Every recording transcript. I made 2 copies and stored them in different places. I wasn't sure what I'd need them for yet, but I knew I'd need them. Cassidy wasn't running from a marriage. She was running toward a new life. One where I was labeled as the unstable, obsessive ex-husband who drove her away. But what I wasn't prepared for was her next move. Because the day after I uncovered everything, she came home early and pretended nothing had happened. No accusations. No rage. No suitcases. Just a smile and a question. Want me to make pasta tonight? When Cassidy came home that evening, she wore the exact same smile she had when we bought our first couch. That disarming, calm grin that said, "Everything is fine, as long as you don't ask the wrong questions." Only this time, she wasn't selling comfort. She was covering tracks. She stepped into the kitchen, dropped her bag gently, and looked at me like she hadn't spent the past 2 months orchestrating a silent assassination of my character. "Want me to make pasta tonight?" she asked casually, already reaching for a pot like we were still just a quirky married couple surviving the daily grind. I should have been furious. I should have thrown the tablet across the room, yelled, demanded answers. But I didn't, because I finally understood something. Cassidy didn't fear confrontation. She thrived in it. Drama made her the victim. Calm made her nervous. So I gave her calm. I nodded. "Sure, that sounds nice." Her eyes scanned my face longer than necessary, waiting for a crack in my expression. When she found none, she turned and began boiling water. The entire scene felt like a play we had rehearsed 1,000 times. Only this time, I was reading from a new script. She talked about her day, mentioned someone from work, laughed at something on her phone, all while I sat at the table, watching her stir the sauce like she hadn't been planning to vanish in 4 days and leave me holding the pieces. But something strange happened that night. Something I never anticipated. I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time in years, I had the truth. Not just suspicion, not gut feelings, not unanswered texts. I had her words, her plans, her lies recorded and time-stamped. And she didn't know it. So I played my part. We ate dinner. We watched a sitcom. I even kissed her goodnight. And as I lay beside her in bed, her back turned toward me, I stared at the ceiling and finally saw the woman I had been sleeping next to for nearly a decade. Not the version I had built in my head, but the real one. Cold. Calculated. Empty. Over the next 2 days, I prepared quietly. I met with an attorney, one I found through a friend who specialized in complex separations involving digital evidence. I gave him everything. The messages, the receipts, the photos, the voice recordings. He read through it all, eyes widening with every page. "You're lucky," he said. "Most people in your position don't find out until it's too late." I wasn't sure what lucky meant anymore, but I thanked him anyway. The second thing I did was change every password I could. Bank accounts, insurance, even the cloud storage Cassidy didn't realize I had locked down. Then I moved a portion of the savings she hadn't touched into a private account under my name. Legally. Quietly. She'd notice soon, but by then, it wouldn't matter. And then came the final piece. I reached out to Jenna. Yes, her Jenna. The backup plan. I used a burner email, pretending to be a mutual acquaintance who had overheard Cassidy talking about leaving. I said I was concerned and wanted to know if she needed help getting out. The reply came 6 hours later. Short. Cold. "She'll be in Austin by Tuesday. But don't involve me. I've done enough already." I printed it and handed it to my lawyer the next morning. That night, Cassidy walked into the kitchen holding her phone, her face tight with confusion. "Hey, did you move money out of the joint account?" I looked up from the couch and kept my voice steady. "I did. Just reorganizing things. Thought we could talk about it this weekend." Her eyes narrowed, but she nodded slowly, clearly weighing whether now was the time to pounce. But she didn't. She smiled again. Okay, just caught me off guard. I smiled back. You've had a lot on your mind lately. She froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to know the words landed. Then she turned away. It happened just after midnight. I was alone in the living room, pretending to watch an old documentary with the volume low, just loud enough to mask the emptiness of the house. Cassidy had gone to bed hours earlier, or at least, that's what she wanted me to think. I'd seen the way she clutched her phone all day, slipping into the bathroom every 30 minutes, whispering with the faucet running. She was unraveling. Slowly, quietly. But beneath the surface, she was preparing to strike back. I could feel it. That's when my phone buzzed. Not a text. A voicemail. I didn't even hear the call come in. Just the alert, sitting there like a ticking clock. I stared at the screen, saw the unknown number, and hesitated. My first instinct was to ignore it. I didn't have the energy for another blow. But something told me I needed to hear it. Something told me she slipped up. I hit play. The first 5 seconds were static and movement. A bag rustling, footsteps, maybe wind. Then her voice, low and tense. I don't know how much longer I can fake it, she said. He's watching me. Every second. I think he knows. I think he's waiting for something. I told Jenna to move everything up, but the guy in Austin's backing out. I'm stuck. And if he finds out about the lawyer? Click. That was it. 17 seconds of Cassidy talking to someone she thought she was calling. Except she didn't hang up fast enough. She hadn't even realized it went to voicemail. I sat there frozen, the air around me turning to ice. She wasn't just planning to leave. She was trying to trap me. Cassidy wasn't scared. She was positioning herself to appear scared. And the mention of a lawyer? That was new. That meant she was escalating, likely preparing to file first and paint a picture of me as controlling, unstable, maybe even dangerous. I sent the voicemail to my attorney immediately. His response came 5 minutes later. Change your locks. Now. I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak in the hallway. By morning, I had already contacted a locksmith and taken the day off work. Cassidy came downstairs groggy-eyed and barefoot, acting like she hadn't just rehearsed her escape plan into my voicemail. She poured herself coffee, leaned against the counter, and said, "You're not going in today?" "Needed a break," I said calmly, sipping my own. "Thought we could talk." She tilted her head, suspicious but composed. "Talk about what?" I smiled. "Everything." She froze. I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes. And for once, she didn't have a comeback. Later that afternoon, while she was out on one of her errands, I boxed up her things. Not all of it, just enough for a message. Just enough to make it clear I wasn't playing the silent fool anymore. I placed the box by the door with a printed copy of the voicemail transcript taped to the top. Highlighted. Dated. She walked in around 6. Saw the box. Froze. "I listened to your message," I said from the kitchen. She stared at the transcript like it was something radioactive. "You went through my phone?" I shook my head. "You called me. You just didn't mean to." Silence. "I'm not your next storyline, Cassidy," I continued. "You don't get to play victim here. Not this time. Not with my words turned into your alibi." Her face hardened. "You're overreacting." "No, I'm finally reacting." She stood there for a moment, gripping her keys so tight I thought the metal would snap. And then, without another word, she picked up the box, walked outside, and drove away. She didn't come home that night. Cassidy didn't come home that night. Or the night after. She didn't even try to message me until 3 days later. No apology. No explanations. Just a single line. "You're really going to do this to me?" I stared at the message for a long time, then locked my phone, stood up from the porch where I'd been watching the sun set, and finally, felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the loud, movie-ending kind where someone runs into the rain and yells their triumph into the sky. No, this was quieter. Better. Like breathing fresh air after being stuck in a windowless room for too long. For the first time in almost a decade, no one was lying to me in my own home. No one was rewriting my emotions and telling me I was the problem. And I didn't chase her. The attorney filed the separation paperwork that week. Cassidy didn't contest it. Maybe because she knew she'd lost the narrative. Or maybe because the version of herself she'd constructed, the liberated woman escaping a fragile man, had crumbled under the weight of her own receipts and recordings. Whatever the reason, she vanished as quickly as she had once walked into my life. My family apologized. Every one of them. Ruth was the first, voice cracking over the phone, saying, "I should have known better. I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner." I didn't hold it against them. Cassidy had been clever, charming. She made lies sound like concern and made me seem like a man unraveling when in truth, I had been quietly holding everything together. I didn't date for a while, didn't feel the need to prove anything. I spent weekends repairing things around the house that had gone untouched, not because Cassidy ever told me not to, but because I never had the space to want to. I took long drives, ate alone in restaurants without apologizing for it, relearned how to enjoy silence. One afternoon, months later, I found the old box in the closet, the one labeled, "If She Ever Lies." I opened it, looked at each piece for the last time. Then I burned it, not out of anger, but because I didn't need it anymore. The truth had already done its job. I wasn't broken. I wasn't crazy. I had trusted my instincts. And I'd chosen not to become like her. Not bitter, not vengeful. Just free. If you've ever been in a situation where someone tried to erase your voice, just know this. Silence isn't weakness. It's waiting. And when the time is right, your truth will land exactly where it needs to. In the comments, share with us. What's one moment in story where someone rose above betrayal and chose peace over revenge? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Right here on Reddit Confessions.